But let's say hello to Alan Dershowitz, of course, Harvard Law professor. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Good.
I hope they have a record of you calling me a lot and me always being available and usually having about, 10, 12-minute duration. I wonder if it'll lead them to anybody.
Well, I hope you're documenting all that because you're favorable to it all, and I'm sure you are, because otherwise my logic tells me you wouldn't always be available. But we don't take it for granted, and we always appreciate your time, sir. Okay. Let's start with let's go overall. I mean, something else President Obama said today was you can't have 100% security and 100% privacy and also not be expected to have inconvenience. So take it from that statement to what we now know, and where are you on this?
Well, he's, of course, 100% right. Even Benjamin Franklin was wrong when he said those who would give up any privacy or rights in the name of security deserve neither. That's nonsense. That's hyperbole. That's extremism. That's the kind of thing we expect from the guy who broke the story for The Guardian, Glenn Greenwald, who never met a terrorist he didn't like and never met an American government official he liked. We need nuance in the discussion. We need to have some compromises. We've made compromises over the years. Airport security is a compromise. Already when you write letters, remember letters? People used to write letters.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court has said you can analyze and have a database of all the addresses, the address from which you sent it, the address to which you sent it, even that metadata. We didn't even have the term metadata then, but that's what it meant, the outside of the envelope. That was permissible. That's the kind of compromise we're making. I don't know whether we should permit every single phone call to be recorded, the number to, the number from, and the duration. I need to know more information. I want to have a debate about it. I want to have congressional hearings. But I don't want these extreme radicals who hate America and love terrorism to be dominating the debate, and that's what's been happening. People are making a hero out of this guy, Glenn Greenwald. He's the same guy who wrote a story for The Guardian saying, do you know who it was who made the film called The Innocence of Islam, the one that killed so many people? You know who made that film? It was a Jewish Israeli from California. That false information could have led to the death of so many people, and that was Glenn Greenwald breaking that story. So, I have to tell you, do not believe anything you read from Glenn Greenwald, and anything you read in The Guardian, take with a grain of salt. Let's wait and see what the facts actually are. I believe the president when he says we're not listening to people's phone calls. That doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, to be intruding even in a minimal way of getting the numbers. And I'm much more worried about the story that was broken by the Washington Post later, namely about foreigners who conceivably can have the contents of their messages overheard. Not so concerned about the foreigners, although there's a lot of objection from Europe and from other places, and it puts us in a harder position with China. But inevitably, when foreigners are talking to Americans, you're going to get some collateral damage. You're going to get some Americans whose conversations are overheard. I know I have a lot of experience with this because clients of mine have been wiretapped and overheard over the years, and you always have inadvertent overhearing. I had a case recently where the government inadvertently listened to 8,000 phone calls, including many, many involving lawyers. So
how is that? You mean they were trying to watch a football game and inadvertently they heard the phone call? How's that happen?
Well, no. What happened is they were deliberately intruding on my client's jailhouse calls to everybody but lawyers. But some lawyers had several numbers, and they listened to at least some seconds, maybe more, of lawyers' calls when they were supposed to be listening only to non-lawyers' calls. So, never confuse malevolence with incompetence. A lot of it's a result of incompetence. Some of it may be malevolence, but we shouldn't indulge in the kind of paranoid streak in American politics by thinking all government's bad and they're doing it for bad reasons. They're doing it for good reasons. They may be overdoing it. I think they are overdoing it, but I think they're doing it benevolently to try to stop terrorism, not to try to find stuff out on political opponents.
Right, and we're talking Alan Dershowitz here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Of course, this comes in the wake of the IRS scandal, where, you can't blame people for hearing Barack Obama say today, no one's listening to your phone calls, saying, yeah, right. I mean, how do we, and as you bring up, how do we know that? And basically, is there any way to know? We may never know. I mean, they could be doing it in select cases, or if they feel there's a need to, or whatever, telling us they're not, but doing it anyway.
Sure, rogue agents can be doing it too. I got a call a couple of years ago from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston saying you've been a victim of crime. I said, it's funny, I feel pretty good. Well, what kind of crime? They said an IRS agent went into the IRS files of 8 of Boston's prominent citizens, including Larry Bird, including the president of Harvard, and including me. I was very happy to be in that
I was just going to say congratulations,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but some IRS agent claimed he was just being curious, and he wanted to see who I give charity to and who my clients are, how much I make. And he did that. He got arrested and indicted and prosecuted for doing that. You don't blame that on the White House. Now, this one, is a little harder because there were 150 some odd visits from the IRS head to the White House. I'd like to know more about that. That kind of thing does fuel the paranoia. Then you have going after the journalists and the leaks and all of that, and it plays into the hands of extremists on both sides. The interesting thing is the opposition to this comes from the hard left as well as the hard right.
Yeah,
and libertarians and ordinary folks.
Right, but there's a lot of Republican support. It seems like most members of Congress, Sensenbrenner is an exception. I think there's one other, but most members of Congress who claim to have known about this on both the left and the right say that they've known about it and it's okay and it's needed and it's necessary, and it has to be done.
Well, I want to hear them make their case. I want to see less classification. There's too much material classified today. And I don't like this secret court that makes these decisions and almost never turns down a government response.
Yeah, the NSA court, yeah.
We don't know who's on the court. Does it get appointed by the Chief Justice? Should it be more widely appointed? Should it represent a greater diversity of judges? I think there's a lot we need to know about this court and a lot we need to know about how it practices law and whether it gives the other side a fair opportunity to be heard. At the very least, you'd think they should have a lawyer who is kind of borrow from the Catholic Church, which is a very good idea, the devil's advocate. Have a lawyer who's there, who has security clearance, but who's there to argue against giving the warrant. So at least both sides are presented.
How does this, and last question, and notwithstanding that you want to know more about it, and we don't know everything, but how does this measure up or compare to, when the left was going crazy because they found out that they were wiretapping some calls that were either made from here to overseas or vice versa, where there was a suspicion that one of the people were involved in terrorism?
Well, when one of the people is involved in terrorism, when there's probable cause to believe somebody's involved in terrorism, I would think a warrant requirement would be satisfied. And in it, I got a postcard some years ago saying one of my phone calls has been overheard, and I found out that somebody had called me who was on a list and wanted legal advice. Obviously, I didn't really know the person.
And they told you on a postcard?
They told me on a postcard that my voice had been overheard, and that was that. I then wrote to them and found out more detail, but I had no objection. They had a legitimate ground for overhearing that other person's calls, not for overhearing them with a lawyer. That was a mistake. But, I think we need a nuanced conversation about this. I think we need to have pragmatic solutions to this. Reform, not revolution. Improvement, not impeachment.
All right. Listen, Alan, thank you again.
Sure,
and I'm sure, we'll be giving the NSA something to do in a week or so.
All right.